prayer requests for all those that couldn't be here. We have a lot of people that are sick and have been going through a lot with their bodies and their minds. So special prayer for Pastor Dillard and Sister Patty and Barry and Kathy and David and Elizabeth. They are all doing well. They're just not feeling very well. So pray for them. But I'm going to get right into it this morning. And this sermon was kind of inspired by Kelsey. I told her I'd give her a little credit. We've been reading the Bible together. We're trying to make it through the whole Bible in 3 months. We're 2 months in, and we're only 50% of the way done. So we got a month that is going to be full of reading. But throughout our reading, we've come across a lot of things that I forgot were in there. Some things that, if you told me that they were in there, I would not believe you. Right. Which is kind of wild because you think you know God's word, right? You think you really have studied it out. And I can say I've probably read the Bible cover to cover more than a few times, and still I come across things that I don't even remember that they have, that it's in there. And where I found myself in that position this last week was 2 Samuel chapter 10. And what I wrote down for this sermon is I put, play the men, ... That's all I wrote down. And it'll make more sense as we get into it. But if you go to 2 Samuel 10, and we're going to start in 9. And you can say amen when you get there. I'll wait for you.
Amen.
Amen.
Bella's on it. And it says, when Joab saw that the front of the battle was against him, before and behind, he chose of all the choice men of Israel, and put them in array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he delivered into the hand of Abishai, his brother, that he might put them array against the children of Ammon. And he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. But if the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then I will come and help thee. It was a battle on both sides, right? I mean, it's the worst case scenario in every part of our life. It's when you're being attacked from the front, from the back, from the sides. It feels like everything that you're going through is just clouding your brain. It's clouding your spirit, clouding everything. It's everywhere. And how many people do you have in your life that you can trust to turn your back on, to fight with you? I mean, I can count a few. I mean, in this case, it's Joab's brother, and I can trust Seth. Like, if Seth and I came up against a lot of guys that wanted to get in a fight, I could turn my back on Seth, and I'm not gonna get hit in the back of the head, right? Like, that's one of the people I can trust. And some of us have forgot that there are people that we can trust to fight battles with us. And we've gotten so used to fighting every battle together, where we both face the problem, we both face the same thing, we're both going through it, that we don't always know how to fight on our own. We don't always know how to go out and say, if it gets too hard for me, I'll call out to you. And you worry about your problems, and I'll worry about mine. We always think that as the church, that we all have to have the exact same mind frame. We all have to want the exact same thing. For some, their outreach might be to find the lost and the homeless and those that are poor in this world, that are tired and weak and weary. That might be how they want to do their ministry. And others might want to help those that might know God but don't fully trust Him, that know God but don't believe in Him. But it's the same battle in different directions. We're fighting for the same thing. But the next verse says, be of good courage, and let us play the men for our people, and for the cities of our God, and the Lord do that which seemeth good. And I kind of struggled with that because I didn't fully understand what that meant at first. And So I started thinking about what it meant to be a man, right? I mean, when you think of a man, what characteristics, what things should they have? They should be strong, right? They should be courageous. They shouldn't be afraid of the dark. Except for like that dark where you can't see your hand. Anybody can be afraid of that, right? But a man should be a perfect example of not being scared, right? But they're saying, let's play the men for our people. So what does it mean to play a man? Well, then it means to pretend to be fully courageous, to pretend to not be scared, to pretend like this is going to be fine. Like, there's some on this side, there's some on that side, but there's two of us to fight them, right? In our armies. Some of us forgot that we need to be playing the part of the courageous. That we need to be playing the part of the fearless, the ones that aren't afraid. Because the world doesn't need to see another group of people that are fearful. And if the church is running around scared, if the church is running around afraid, even if we are, if that is what we're portraying to the world, why would they come to us to find safety? Why would they want to serve our God if we're running around afraid of everything? Jesus wasn't scared of anything. They were sick, he'd go touch them. No problem. If they were lepers, he'd go and shake hands and hug them and take care of them. Wasn't even worried about getting sick. Didn't even care. And yet the church has become so afraid of every disease and every time the news comes on and there's another war, there's another sickness, there's another fire, there's another flood. And the church is running around terrified of it. So it's time to pretend like we're not. It's time for us to realize that the world needs to see a group of strong people, even if we don't believe ourselves that we are strong. It's hard. It's not always easy. There are things that are going to scare you. You're going to get sick and it's going to scare you. There are going to be attacks on your life, upon your job that are going to make you scared. It says, think on these things, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things. If one more thing is on my plate, it's going to be too much. If one more thing comes against me, I'm just going to quit. I'm tired of it. And we've become lazy with God's Spirit because we don't trust God the way that we should. And see, I know if I was in that position, I would be weighing if I lost into the equation. What if we lose? What if it doesn't work out? But they said, and the Lord do that which seemeth him good. There's nothing that you can do better than God. Not a single thing. We try. We try to run our life better than God. We make decisions much better than God sometimes. We've decided that when we go out and God tells us to do something that, well, that's not going to work the way you think, God. That's not how it works. I'm down here and you're up there, and I have a much better perspective of what it's like. That's the attitude that some of us carry. Sometimes God will put something in my heart and tell me that it's going to be a certain way, and at first I'll start out truly believing Him, and I'll tell everybody about it, that this is how it's going to be. God told me it's going to be like this. I just got to feel that this is how it is. And then over time, as it plays out and it doesn't happen exactly the way that I first thought, and it hasn't ended up, I start to think, well, maybe that was a little unrealistic. But we serve an unrealistic God. We serve a God that doesn't follow the chain of command that we have created. That doesn't follow the rules and the regulations and the desires and the things that we want. We have it pretty set up where we think, oh, well, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, that will happen. And we've become really good at making our own decisions. We prophesy by probability. We weigh the expectations. We let computers make decisions on what God can do. Like on if you've ever been like diagnosed with something, or you have like some sort of disease, the first thing you do every single time is you go, what does it mean to blank? Why do I feel like this? What are my chances of surviving this? And the first thing that comes up, people between the ages of 50 and 75 have this percentage of dying, and people between the age of, 14 and 27 have this percentage of dying, and then we just let that be the gospel in our life. That's how it's going to be. Why? Why would we let a computer or a probability predict the outcome when only God knows? And we're going to see more of it. You think that people listen to those that can read their tea leaves and the tarot cards and all that? You think they listen because they think that they're going to be wrong? No, they listen because they think that it might be right. They listen because that might be the truth. They might actually get something out of it. And even if they're wrong, based on whatever they said. And so if they picked this cup and it was the cup you wanted them to have, then you'd take away the other cup. But if they picked this cup and it was the one you didn't want them to have, then you'd just take that one away. And you'd make the choice for them, even though they got to pick, right? Sometimes that's what God does to us. We make a choice, and God's like, well, that's not actually what I wanted for you, so I'm just going to remove that one out of the way so that you can actually have this one. But we don't trust Him for it. We say, well, God, I picked that one. How come you would take that away? God, I did this. How come you would do that? And we deceive ourselves over and over and over again, thinking that we have a better mindset than God. Are you putting on the full armor of God, going into battles knowing that you can't predict the outcome? You can't change what's going to happen. But you still have to fight for it. And we still have to be courageous. We still have to play the men for our people and for our God, going out courageously, even when we're terrified. It's okay to be scared of tomorrow. I'm not saying that being scared makes you weak or makes you silly or puts you in a position less than others, but when we run to the world to feel consoled, we look like fools. Because we shouldn't be consoled by the world. We shouldn't have to be. We serve an all-knowing God, right? We say that He's all-powerful. We say that He's magnificent, that He's the God of gods, that He's the Lord of lords, that He's the King of kings. We say all of these things. But when everything turns around and it's a problem and we're facing things, we turn to the world for answers. That doesn't sound like we believe in a God that is Lord of everything. We say it on Sunday, but we forget it on Monday. That God is in control of it all. And in 13 it says, and Joab drew nigh, and the people that were with him, unto the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. And when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fled, they fled also before Abishai, and entered into the city. So Joab returned from the children of Ammon, and came to Jerusalem. And when the Syrians saw that they were smitten before Israel, they gathered themselves together. They didn't even have to fight the battle. The hard part was over. The ones that were on one side and the ones that were on the other side both took off, and then they were able to join back together to kill the rest of them. It says later on that they killed, in this 18, and the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew the men of 700 chariots of the Syrians and 40,000 horsemen, and smote Shobach, the captain of their host, who died there. They didn't even have to fight them alone. But it was the belief that they could split up their army and fight 2 different battles that made the enemy fear. The enemy was so scared that it almost seemed cocky the way that they fought it. Because if they had just stayed all together and gone after one side, they wouldn't have ran off like that. They would have said, oh, they're scared. They need all of their army. But you wouldn't believe how many battles you could have won if you would have just put on a game face. How many things you would have made it through better if you would have just pretended you weren't scared. If you would have just believed in yourself a little bit more, you might not have even had to fight the battle. Wrap your head around that. Sometimes we go through things and we want so many different results. We want a list of, to make it through this, you just need these 10 things. First, do this, and then you can do this, and after that you do this, and you will be a third of the way through. And once you do that, then you can do this, and that's how you make it through this situation. We've become so accustomed to just seeking out how to solve our problems. Like right now, if you Googled how to get over a breakup or how to get over losing a loved one, I guarantee you can find a list of 10 things that you should do to get past that. Super easy. But that's not realistic. That's not actually how you fight battles when you're a child of God. Sure, there's wisdom and there's knowledge that we can gain from seeking the internet or seeking Google and finding something, right? But did you pray first? Did you seek God? Did you put on your game face and say, all right, I'm gonna face it head on. I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to go through this anymore. So I'm just gonna move on from it and just keep pushing. But no, we want 12-step programs, and we want God to tell us the steps to make it through this, because I don't want my life to get. I'm not saying at all that losing a loved one is easy, but it's much easier when you trust God for their soul. It's much easier when you believe in a righteous God, when you believe in a merciful God that weighs out every decision they made, weighs out every part of their life, and takes care of it from there. That makes it a lot easier. Or when you feel like you're struggling in your spirit, turn to God. It seems like such a simple answer, but we struggle with it so much. Because we've gotten so used to not being courageous, to being fearful, to being afraid, to tucking our tail, to running away from every battle because it doesn't seem like it's the right time, right? This battle was kind of inconvenient. It wasn't really the right time for them to be fighting a group much larger than them. But there is no right time to get right. There's no right time to find a better relationship with God. There's no right time to go through something. You could have $1 million in your bank account, your car runs great, it's brand new, you just got a new house, you've got all the clothes you want, there's nothing that you need. And something bad can happen and you're like, I just wasn't ready for this. Or you could be poor and your car breaks down every other day and you don't have $1 million. You might be negative that much, but at least you got God, right? We say that, right? That's something that we say. That I'm going to serve God when I'm rich and when I'm poor. And I'm going to serve God when I'm sad or I'm happy. It doesn't even matter because I've got God, right? Do you believe that? Or can you humble yourself and say, I believe, God, but help my unbelief? You know how much greater of a statement that is than saying, God, I don't know if I believe? You know how much more faith it takes to say, I believe, but help my unbelief? He doesn't need any more people to be afraid. We're supposed to be the ones consoling them. You realize places in the world, we wonder why. We really wonder why. Why people get such horrible advice, right? Well, I went and I did this. I went to this group and they told me that I should believe in a higher power, right? Well, they didn't tell me what power that was and they didn't tell me where to find it, but that's what I should do. And we say, well, how could someone get that advice? That's horrible. Or we wonder why people seek out therapists and counseling for every problem in their life, everything they face, everything. Their car broke down, I need an emergency meeting with a counselor, it's horrible, life is awful, right? And there's times for that. Don't get me wrong. There are horrible things that people go through that they need certain types of counseling, right? But you realize that all of those people exist because the church has failed. The church has failed to be a place where people can find refuge, a place where people can seek. We wonder why people are getting horrible answers. It's because the church isn't giving them the right ones. We wonder why people find themselves seeking out false gods. A lot of the time, it's because the church failed to make it known who somewhere along the line there was a part of us that was created to fight against that. Your spirit is mingled with your flesh. Which is stronger? Do you trust God enough to split up and to fight different battles and to believe and to go forward not knowing the result? I want to see the results before I ever get something. I don't buy anything I don't research at all. I'm not the type of person that's like, oh, just give me whatever you want and I'll like it. No, that's not true at all. I might tell you that, but it's not exactly true. If I want something, I've watched YouTube videos about it. I Googled it. I know how it's going to perform. I know that it'll break if you do this, so you don't want to do that, right? And some of it you won't like. And that's okay. Sometimes I read the Bible and I say, God, I don't know why you did that. That just doesn't seem right. That was not politically correct, God. But I know it. And I understand why God might have done it. I heard someone say that Christians are the least respected out of all religions because they don't have anything they truly follow. Ouch. And they listed off a whole bunch of religions. And I almost agreed. I agreed that we would look unrespected because we don't stand up for our beliefs. We don't talk against what we know to be wrong. Because we've gotten so wrapped up in Jesus loves everything. Jesus loves everything. That we've let sin become wrapped up in the love of God. That doesn't make any sense. So it's time to stick to our beliefs, to really stand on who we are. And if you don't know who that is, you better find it. Who are you going to be? What are you going to believe? And whatever you do, believe it with your whole heart. Doesn't it say that God doesn't like the lukewarm? At least be hot or cold. Pastor Adam likes room temperature water, so I'm worried about it. But what are you gonna be? Are you gonna put on your game face? Are you going to decide that faith is going to take over everything in your life? I promise you it works. I can't give you the results all the time, but I can promise you it works. And it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be hard, and you're just going to have to know that. It's going to hurt a little bit. There's going to be times that it doesn't seem right. There's going to be times that it doesn't make any sense why God would do that. And you're just going to believe it. I would much rather you be fooled if you really wanted it to be that way, right? We want to believe that there was some sort of crazy events that caused, the pyramids to be made and the dinosaurs to disappear, and there was this large ice age. And we really want to believe in all those different things. We listen to them, and we hear them, and we get this excitement inside, and we're like, I really, really wondered what had happened. How did that happen? I can't believe it, right? And we've become foolish for the things of this world, and we're willing to follow these tinfoil hat ideas and become conspiracy theorists about every situation, but following God seems a little crazy. It doesn't make I don't get it. And sadly, some of it started in the church and made its way into the world. So who do you trust to put at your back to fight the battles? And it's okay if you don't believe in yourself. If you're a little scared, if you're a little terrified, because I would wait for Seth to beat up. If you had a little more faith, I'm not talking about moving mountains faith and just completely overrunning the world with your faith. I'm talking about a little bit. You've got a baseline. Can you go a little more? Can you do one more faith push-up? Just one more. Can you really believe for what God has for you? Do you believe Him for it? And if not, fake it till you make it. Sometimes that's the way it has to be. I tend to have a semi-negative outlook on things sometimes because I weigh the risk. And I'm like, well, no, it's over now, because if I thought if I didn't start by 9 o'clock, I definitely wouldn't be done by the end of the day. So we should just do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow we'll start at 8. Because if we didn't start at 8, it didn't work out today. And I'll weigh it out. I'm like, last time it took 7.5 hours to do this. I don't think it can be done today. So I wouldn't be preaching this to you if it wasn't something that I don't struggle with. But God said it's time to stop giving up on the battles that I've already won for you. We're giving up on the battles that God has already won. If they'd have said, you know what, let's just curl up in a ball and die, of course they would have got overran. Duh. Anybody that curls up in a ball against 2 armies is going to die. But God already won it. Some of the battles you're facing, God has already fought them for you. And you're just playing the part. You think you're working so hard, you think you're making your way through it, and God's already done it for you. But if you give up, you'll lose it for sure. For sure you will lose it. So just keep on pushing forward. If that's the only thing that you get out of this, just keep pushing forward for what God has for you. Just keep seeking Him out. And fight on this side, and make sure you got somebody fighting on this side. You can get crazy faith where you believe that God's going to do it even if it sounds wild. That God is better than your doctors, God's better than your teachers, God's better than this world, God's better than your boss, God's better than all of that. And you know what? Start sounding like the people that they make look silly in movies. In movies, there'll be one person and they're like, well, I'm just going to trust Jesus. Jesus is my buddy. He'll save me from this. And everybody laughs. Ha ha ha, I can't believe someone would really think like that. No, we should. We should really be thinking like that. We should really be saying, well, Jesus is the best doctor there is, so I'm going to trust in him. And people will say, wow, you sound crazy. Wow, that sounds wild. But it's true. Yet we find ourselves laughing when we see someone act like that. Even I. I'll see someone and they're a little too godly. You all know what I'm saying too. And they're just like, but do you trust God to bring you through it? Are you going to say, I know this is how it's going to be and I need to go through it like this, but I'm still going to trust God for a healing. I'm still going to trust God for a blessing. Even if I have to use insulin the rest of my life, right? I'm still going to trust God. I still know God's going to bring me through it. Even if it's at the hand of insulin, God's going to bring me through it. That's how it's going to happen. We don't give God enough credit for what he does. So put your battle face on. Stop trying to find the directions to get to a better mindset. Stop trying to find your Zen before you find your God. Find God and move forward from there. Get past the idea that you need someone to tell you how to make it through everything. Prayer goes a long way. Seeking God goes a long way. You know how to get through it. You already know the answer. God has put the answer inside of you, but you want someone else with more authority than you to confirm it. Just trust God. God gives us a pretty good instinct. We know when something's right, and we usually know when something is definitely wrong, right? But have the faith, have the desire, and play the man, even if you're scared. Just pretend. I promise, if you pretend like it doesn't stress you out, if you really just pretend like you trust God fully, eventually, that pretending will become more and more real, and you will truly start to believe yourself. You can tell yourself a lie so much that you eventually believe that it's actually the truth, right? Somebody at Walmart, they bumped into your cart and said, oh, I'm so sorry. And when you get home, you feel like that story wasn't good enough, so you're like, they bumped into my cart, and they were just like, and just walked off. And then you tell the next person, they're like, and they bumped into my cart, and I think they did it on purpose. They just slammed their cart into mine, and you just start telling this story and story and story. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually you forget that what really happened is they just bumped into your cart, and they said they were sorry. But that story wasn't good enough to tell everybody because you wanted something with some drama and some meat, right? If we can do that in our daily lives, right? We do it all the time. My boss said that you need to stop being on your phone or I'm going to fire you because you're the worst employee ever. What they really said, translation was, hey, I've noticed that your production has been a little lower lately. Let's make sure we're paying attention more. But we make it this huge thing where they were going to fire us and everything's horrible. I want to start taking that mind frame and applying it to God. God said that it's going to be okay. And then I make the story a little bigger. God said it's going to be all right, and I'm going to make it through this with no problems at all. I have the faith to believe it, and it's going to be better than it ever was. And I'm going to tell the next person because that wasn't good enough. God told me that this is the best part of my life that I'm going to be in thus far. And it's going to be so much more time that I'm going to have. There's going to be so much more money. I'm going to have more of a desire for him. He's going to light a fire in me. And I'm going to start saying it so much that I start believing in myself. That's what it means to play the man. It means to be courageous when you're terrified. There's a lot of times that my dad might not have looked afraid, but I guarantee he was. doing something that I was like, man, he doesn't even think that's a problem. He's like, oh, it'll be fine. Inside, he was stressed out. And my little 7-year-old self didn't see it at all, right? That's how I want to portray myself to the world. I want people to see me go through something wild, and the whole time I've got a smile. And I'm not even worried about it. It'll be fine. It is what it is. And it sounds crazy. And it looks interesting to the world that I could be happy in the midst of the worst section of my life. So put your game face on, all right? Start fighting battles that God has already won. It's that easy. God's already gone before you. And if you lose it, it's probably because God wants you to go a different direction. So when you tell that story, don't tell it as, I went and I fought this thing and I thought God was on my side, but I actually ended up just losing. And it brought me to a different section of my life. No, tell it a little differently. I went to battle and it didn't work out the way that I first thought, but God changed it to be better than what it could have been, even if I had won. So me losing turned into a blessing. This is that whole glass half empty, glass half full. We need to apply that mindset to God and start looking for the blessings. Start looking for the goodness of God in every situation. To them, it seemed like their only choice to split up and to be courageous. That was the only one they had. But because they were brave, their enemy fled from before them. And they got to kill them all anyways. All because they believed that it was possible. They said, whatever God's going to do, whatever He thinks is going to be good. That's the mindset we need to put on. Putting on the mind of Christ and really believing that every battle we are going into, God has already gone before us. And He's going to go with you through the whole thing, and He's going to clean up the mess you made. So I'm going to ask that the musicians come at this time. We're going to have a few songs and a time of prayer. I'm going to ask if Pastor Adam would come, and if you feel the desire to come before the altar, we will pray the prayer of faith with you. We will anoint your forehead with oil as the Bible has instructed.